All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Hydroplate Week of Celebration. We are so excited to be able to honor Walt Brown and to also hopefully have the book ready for Christmas. Those would be excellent gifts. And we are honored to have Dr. Matthew Welborn here tonight. And he spoke at the 2023 conference. So we are so excited to have more and more PhDs stepping up to the plate for the Hydroplate. So welcome aboard, Matt. We're glad to have you here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Brian. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Now, where did you get to your PhD? Where was that?
So I actually graduated from Colorado or from the United States Naval Academy. So I served as a naval officer in the U.S. Navy. I was a nuclear submarine officer. And after that, I decided to go back to school. So I did 6 years in active duty in the submarine service. And I went back and got a master's in electrical engineering. And then I got a PhD in electrical engineering as well at MIT.
At
So it was,
MIT.
yes, sir. So it's a great opportunity to go and study and spend a number of years in really focused work, learning a pretty complex field.
Well, and that's not just a diploma mill there. You got to know your stuff to go in there and a nuclear naval officer. So, why, sharp as they come. And so somebody, it's quite a blessing to have somebody with your intellect that's looking at the hydroplate theory. What draws you to the hydroplate? Why would you want to give talks and at that conference?
Well, it's interesting. My background is a little bit similar to Walt's. So Walt also was a military officer. I believe he was a graduate of West Point, wasn't he?
Yes, West Point.
And so he was an Army officer. Now, he served an entire career in the military, but he did go on to get a PhD as well.
Right.
In
And he
fact,
went to MIT
he
also.
went
He
to
was going
MIT
to
as
go
well.
to,
Okay.
yeah, he was
Yep.
going to He was
He's
going
got a
to go
couple
to
years
Caltech or
on me.
MIT, and he picked MIT because that was the best. And when he
Okay.
tested in, he was in the 99 percentile. So
Wow. Wow.
yeah, so we got some sharp people that are see the logic in this hydroplate theory. Engineers tend to love it. What was your degrees in?
I have a undergraduate degree in systems engineering control systems, and then a master's in electrical engineering and a PhD in computer science and electrical engineering as well.
Wow. Wow. So you know how to study and you know how to you know how to think, that's for sure.
Well, it's a pretty broad area, but a lot of my work has been in signal processing, in RF systems, so radio systems, communication systems, wireless. So I've worked in a number of different fields, but I like to think of us as people that look for the patterns in the noise. That's what I spent a lot of my career doing, try to figure out what is buried out there in all the data as we sift through it and understand what's inside of it.
And with Walt Brown's, it's such an all-encompassing theory with all that data and all these mysteries that he's able to tie it together in one theory. What a blessing is that? What was if you had to pick one thing that says, I think the hydroplate is accurate because of, what would you say? What do you think goes to the top?
Oh gosh, just picking one thing. Well, I became a Christian in my 20s, and up to that point, I would say I was a believer in evolution. I thought that science had all the answers and they had things figured out from a secular perspective. But after I became a Christian, I had to sort that out, and I realized that we really didn't understand how everything around us came to be. And in particular, in my field, um, we look at flows of information, and we look at the source of information. We look at how does information move back and forth between different systems. And I began to understand that in living systems, it's the same thing. And there's a lot of scientists who are looking at the origin of information, the flow of information, and as well as not just in biological systems, but how is this whole world around us designed? And so I think Walt kind of pulled together a lot of different things in his theory. It's a very comprehensive theory, I think, is one of the main things that I like. He addresses in his book and in his other work uh, biology and genetics and all the geophysics and the cosmology, and ties it all in together with the Bible, which I think is an amazing thing to do, and it's fairly unique in theories. I mean, we don't know exactly what the ultimate truth is, but he did an amazing amount of work, and a lot of it has really amazing amounts of analysis and data to back it up. Many predictions that came true or have yet to come true, but still might. And he's just an amazing man, and I think God really worked through him to bring a lot of truth into people's lives.
Yeah, and what a blessing we have to be alive when he was alive, and he just went home to be. He went to heaven last week, and what a loss that is. But he left something for us to carry on, and I'm just going through that book. Everything, like you said, it's just so all encompassing. I remember listening to Walt Brown Week on Real Science Radio. That's rsr.org, and listened to him explain evolution, the origin of Grand Canyon, and Kevin Lea talked about comets, and it was just an incredible show, a week of shows. And I've never seen the world the same again, or even the solar system the same. And what a tremendous blessing. So they probably didn't teach you that at MIT. How did you find out about the hydroplate?
Well, as I said, after I became a Christian, I spent many years, decades, kind of working back and peeling back the layers of what I had learned in school and what I thought I understood about the world, about life, and about the universe, and began to peel back the layers. And it's clear that the Bible was presenting a story about creations and origins that was very different than what most secular people believe. And so I think I came to see, I think the main thing was at first, when I understood that evolution just could not possibly account for the complexity of life as we see it around us, that as the more we learn about living systems, about not just humans, but even the simplest forms of life are so complex, the more we learn, I began from my scientific training to understand that that level of complexity cannot happen by accident. You cannot have randomness create structure and patterns and order and complexity. And really, that was one of the linchpins in the whole secular worldview, that if you take away evolution and say evolution can't happen, then you began to understand that the whole reasons for the belief in long ages of time and millions and billions of years, a lot of that was created in order to allow room for some kind of naturalistic origin story to begin to take place, both of living systems on the Earth itself, our solar system, the universe that we see out around us. All those things, if you want to account for them from a naturalistic perspective without an ultimate creator, then you have to wave your hands a lot, but you also need a lot of time. That's what people fall back on, is there's lots and lots of time, and we see things happening in the world around us, and whatever's here came about through slow, gradual processes over, incomprehensible periods of time. But like I said, the linchpin was once I realized evolution could not possibly be true, then I peeled back the layers and said, well, that means that the universe and life and our planet and our home here could all have been created in a very short period of time, just like the Bible teaches. And I began to see how all those things come together and reinforce each other.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I know I talk to college students and they say with all this time and all these planets, it's just going to happen. And so I'll ask them, well, do you think that your dryer when you go get your clothes out, do you think you're going to go there sometime and it's going to be all folded up and the socks are going to be paired together? It's just going to happen. They're infinite probability. But yeah, but there's people that have gone down that same path and they've come to the catastrophic plate tectonics flood model. But you've come across, you're supporting the hydroplate flood model, and it's kind of difficult when I speak and I ask who's heard of the hydroplate. It's very rare, it's maybe 10% of the people. So how did God bring that theory across your path so you could notice that?
Well, I originally began to read about some of the advocates of a biblical creation through many books that were written maybe in the last 50 years or so. So scientific creationism was fairly new. there were a number of different theories that people had, the gap theory, um, the canopy theory, things like that, where they were trying to fit what they saw with things that the Bible said. But I think one of the things that I began to, I think I had understood that something like that must be true. And certainly I think we could also say that God could create everything just the way that we see it. But because he's all powerful and
Oh yeah.
all know. But I think that when I came across Walt Brown's book, and I actually can't remember the first time that I found it. I think I had reading through creation science literature and got a copy of his book. I ordered it. I was very excited, and it came in the mail. And and it's an amazing book. Like I said, it's very comprehensive. And he laid out at the beginning all of the issues that he saw with scientific theories about the origin of life, about the origin of our planet and our solar system and the universe. And then he went through step by step and created related his model that was quite different than the canopy theory, right?
Mhm.
Canopy theory said there was the origin of rain for the flood and water for the flood was some reservoir of water high up in the air, but I think it's been rejected, right? People began to understand that. But I think Walt Brown um, had had this vision, this revelation to him, and I think it was divinely inspired, that the water was just what the Bible said. The Bible talks about the fountains of the deep, and that's one of the big differentiators with hydroplate theory is that the source of water that the Bible talked about was vast amounts of water underneath the surface of the earth. And as you go and take a look at that theory that he created, and he iterated on it for many years, but he began it, you could see that it really lined up with what the Bible was kind of teaching at a very high level, that this was all there. The earth was the origin of all of these things, the water that God used in the flood. And Walt Brown kind of laid it all out in a way that showed there were huge amounts, vast catastrophic processes that occurred that really we had no experience with. And I think that's one of the hard things for people to understand is just how large and how catastrophic these events were, that vast continents of land and rock could shift around very rapidly, that the total amount of water that's in the oceans or a significant part of it rushed out of subterranean caverns and flooded the surface of the earth. I mean, it all makes sense that everything kind of comes together nicely, but it explains so many things that I think science still cannot explain.
Oh yeah.
One example that in his book he talks about, and this was a surprise to me, nobody had ever pointed out to me all the things that we don't understand about our solar system,
Yeah.
about asteroids and comets and the moon, and the reason that we see all kinds of debris and trans-Neptunian objects and debris out in the orbit of the Earth around the sun. And he actually made an amazing case that a lot of that material started out on the earth, and the rupture of the Great Deep was so catastrophic that it ejected a huge amount of water and rock and debris and even organic chemicals out into space. Up above our atmosphere, some of it fell back as torrential rain, but a lot of it actually was launched into space because it was such a huge, huge event. And it's amazing how he was able to show that explained many of the unknown things, the inexplicable things that we have that scientists just can't account for the origin of in our solar system and here on Earth as well.
Yeah, I know that there's articles on trans-Neptune objects, and they're puzzled because they're orbiting, some things are orbiting the wrong way, and they can't explain that with their Big Bang theory. And I think that this hydroplate theory will destroy the Big Bang once it gets into the mainstream because it makes accurate predictions. It explains 25 major features on Earth and in the solar system, plus NASA discoveries are validating it. And Walt's son, Rob, he teaches at the U.S. Air Force Academy, and he wrote a paper that got published in a secular journal that explains how the trans-Neptune objects got out there, and basically said they came from the inner solar system, not to in the relatively recent past. So he has to choose his words carefully. but I think that's a euphemism. It came from Earth 6,000 years ago,
Sure.
and it's really a shame that people have to be careful about what they say. And I think he's tenured now, so he's fine. But other places you could lose your job. Jerry Bergman, he's written 3 volumes of books on this, where people, they could lose the job if they kick the sacred cow of Big Bang and evolution. Is that much of an issue where in your line of work, or is that not a big deal?
So I am a practicing engineer still. So I work on research efforts that are about using the principles of physics and magnetism and mathematics and everything and information theory to design systems for our customers. So it tends to be fairly focused. We are not really out there investigating, natural parts of the world or things like that. That's what I do in my spare time
Right.
as a hobby, right? Is to read up and understand more about how our universe behaves and how it operates, and also listen and think about how God could have created it.
Oh yeah.
So it doesn't really impact my work. I've published many papers, but they don't really touch on. It doesn't come to be that you have to endorse one origin story over another in order to publish in these technical fields.
Right, because in your field it has to work. It's applied science.
That's
It
right.
needs to work, and it's not,
That's
and
right.
that's what science should be. What's observable and testable. And it bothers me that they're teaching a blind chance perspective in our government schools. And not only that, they're using errors. There's false information to get the kids to believe that. And so and like Walt Brown, he said that every student should do an origins project. They look at the evidence and then they look and try and figure out what's the best explanation for the fossils and the layers of rock and the DNA and the solar system. And then they come to their own conclusion. And whatever they decide isn't what matters. It's can they articulate it? Can they argue the point logically? And that would teach them how to think critically. And that's what we need. We need more thinkers. And I like what Walt Brown, I'm trying to get the Hydroplate protocol going. Before you present your theory, present your predictions and your accurate predictions and biblical scripture. Before you say anything, we want to know, how accurate are you? What biblical support do you have? And what accurate predictions are there? So we're trying to blaze the trail there. And hopefully there's going to be some museums that allow the hydroplate theory in there. I think that's one of the big theories, that the big dominoes that has to fall. And so we've got it seems to be like the accurate theory. How do you have any ideas on how we can get this into the mainstream and have it impact the culture better?
Well, I think that certainly the way that people learn about new ideas has changed in the past years and past decade or so. There's a tremendous amount of time that people spend reading and listening to material online. YouTube channels, online conferences, Zoom meetings, and blogs and shows like this where we can talk just casually across many miles and exchange ideas, and that's opened up an amazing amount of exchange of information. So Walt started out in a time when he worked essentially alone by himself, and he traveled and he saw things, but he wrote his entire book, many half a dozen editions. But now it's really kind of caught fire, and I think a lot of people are open to looking at video presentations and hearing discussions and listening into talks and other people's testimony about what they've learned, and reinforcing all the things that fit together with some of the theories like hydroplate theory in particular, how it answers a lot of questions. And so I think that's what's going to happen, is you just have more and more people become exposed to it. And I think that's what's going to happen. At the beginning of his work, Walt laid out a lot of problems. I think he's got over 100 issues with evolution,
Yeah.
and with secular explanations for the origin of the earth and the universe. And he points out dozens and dozens of these things that cannot be explained. And I
Yes.
think even within his book, one of the things I appreciate about his book is in each area that he talks about, he puts side by side, sometimes 2, 3, sometimes 10 different hypotheses
Yep.
or explanations for a particular phenomenon, like buried mammoths
Oh yeah.
or origin of the planets or why did we have an ice age. On every
Mm.
one of these topics, he's got a table that he fills out,
Yeah.
and he puts, a half a dozen or more different theories, and he asks specific points of evidence that the theory either supports or
Yep.
doesn't fit with, and he uses stoplights, red or
Yep.
yellow or
Yep.
green.
Yep.
And there's some theories that have a bunch of red lights,
Yep.
and yet people are not even aware
Yep.
that it can't explain some of the evidence that we know about. So I think part of it is just people are a little bit ignorant that the standard explanations, the secular explanations, have so many issues that can't be explained.
Oh yeah.
In
Yeah.
evolution, the origin of life, the origin of our solar system. I mean, you've mentioned the Big Bang a number of times. The Big Bang really is not even well defined. There are many secular scientists who have rejected the Big Bang because they don't believe that it can explain what we're seeing. And I think now with the James Webb space, telescope that's been deployed, that we're finding many, many things that don't fit with what scientists had expected to see before it was launched about the things that they see in distant parts of the universe as they look out into the universe. It doesn't fit what their ideas were.
Oh yeah.
And so we're having to go back and rethink a lot of the things that they thought were true.
Yeah, and it's such a laughing stock. Jason Lyle, he said, you know what, your James Webb predictions are going to be wrong. And once you realize they're wrong, then I predict you're going to say galaxies formed much sooner than expected. And he was right both times. And there's a cosmologystatement.org. It's an open letter to the scientific community that shows all the holes in the Big Bang theory. But then it goes on and says, but all the funding goes for Big Bangers. So you just get this
Well,
perpetuating theory because that's where all the funding goes. And then the other thing people, and we were talking about this, the descentfromdarwin.org. There's over 1,200 PhD scientists who doubt Darwinian evolution. And I think kids should be taught that fact when they're learning about evolution. And then, some people, I gave the ninth edition. This is the prototype. It's a proofreading copy. And
oh,
I gave
wow.
that to, last year, I gave it to a professor at St. Cloud State, and she emailed me 2 days later and she said, just pick it up at the office. I don't want to know it because Walt's not a geologist. And it's like, but Walt took geology classes from Dr. Bob Dietz. He's one of the key plate tectonic guys out there. He's the guy who coined the term seafloor spreading. And not only did he take classes with him, he met with him every Wednesday for a couple hours and they discussed things. And and one time, Walt asked him where all the limestone came from because limestone
Sure, sure.
releases
From
carbon
Dr.
dioxide. And it's like, and then Bob Dietz says, beats the blank out of me. So there's
Yeah,
some,
there's an amazing number of issues like that Walt covers in his book that I had no idea. And I'm not a professional geologist either. And I think and Walt's not claiming to be. But
right.
what he does do is he has read the literature, he has talked to experts, as you said, he spent a large amount of time with experts, but he also was widely trained in many different fields,
Yes.
and he's asking questions. He is a layman, but I don't think it's true that geologists are the only people that can talk about geology, for
Well,
example, right?
exactly. Sometimes the breakthroughs come from people who are outside of the groupthink. I think
Sure.
John Wooden said, when everybody thinks the same, nobody thinks. Sometimes you need an outsider, like Ignaz Semmelweis. He figured out you should wash your hands after doing autopsies, and what a radical idea that was. But he was ridiculed because it was outside the consensus. And so
Well, and
we
I
have to,
think many people that are scientists are so specialized in their fields today. If they're a evolutionary biologist or if they're a geologist, they don't really understand the relationships and what the issues are in the other fields
oh
and
yeah,
how they're related and how they call into question, things. If the Earth's not really old, then an evolutionist should reevaluate that, or a geologist should take a look at that and reevaluate the things that they're seeing in a different way. And I think many of them do. But I think we're so specialized that it's very difficult for a person to understand such a wide range of different fields and how there are issues that are in many of them that draw into question all of this whole comprehensive explanations about where we came from and how the universe originated.
Right, right. And I think that was Walt's superpower, if you will. He was so knowledgeable on so many different areas from, radioactivity to chemistry to astronomy, just so well read and so sharp too. I mean, a lot of that stuff just goes way over my head, but he's able to condense it into an understandable form. But then he's got all the sources for it too, all these amazing how all these scientific journals that he's sourced. And so it's such a blessing that he's done all that work. And that's one of the things that motivates me. I want to make sure that this hydroplate theory gets into the next generation because I think Walt Brown was today's Isaac Newton. He just understood so many things, and I would hate to see that fade into history. And so we're doing whatever we can. And hopefully this week of celebration where the book's available, where people can get it for online and for Christmas. But yeah, we're getting close to almost out of time. I do appreciate all that making time in your busy schedule. Are there any closing comments you'd like to say before we take off?
Um, like I said, I appreciate your work in celebrating Walt. I think part of it is to acknowledge, all the work that he did. And as you said, even though Walt passed away recently, I'm excited to see that there's a whole community of people that I've got to know over the last several years that you've connected with. And we've been at some of these events together, and I think celebrating Walt and his life and all of his work. And I think it's fantastic that this new edition is going to come out because if somebody has read one of the earlier editions, the ninth edition is just amazing. I've read the PDF. I think the PDF itself is twice the size of the eighth edition book, which is one of the ones that I had. So there's a huge amount of additional information. And I was a nuclear engineer, so I appreciate all the new material on radioactivity.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
these are amazing evidences that nobody else can even account for. Nobody
Oh
else
yeah.
has even thought about them. And it's amazing to see. So I just encourage people to take a look, plan on spending, you could spend the rest of your life understanding how God created this universe and this earth around us. And it's just amazing to see. So glory to God for what he's done, for how he has opened people's eyes to see that. And I think it also shows us that we were just not just the earth and the universe and this planet and human life, but each one of us was created in an amazing way, that we're not here by accident. And I think that when people come to realize they have a creator and each one of us was made in an amazing way, I think people will see their place in the universe and their relationship with God in a whole different light. So I'm thankful that this whole study of creation science has changed so many people's lives and opened their eyes to what the reality of this world and where they fit into it. So I think God will use it in mighty ways. So I appreciate your work and others that are working in this area as well.
And that's really the motivation for all of this. There's going to be an eternity, and the people are either going to be with God or without, they're in heaven or hell. And a lot of people are believing the Big Bang and evolution is fact, and they reject the Bible. And if they reject Jesus Christ, they'll end up in hell. And this is a good way to help people see that, the Bible and science go hand in hand. There's no opposition. And you had mentioned the ninth edition. If people are interested in getting that PDF, you can go into rsr.org/HPT. That's rsr.org/HPT. And then you see this book, and underneath the book, it'll say ninth edition, and you can click on that. And then you can download it. And I think everybody should download it because who knows, you'd hate to have it on the internet. And you can't get the
Sure.
internet for whatever
Sure.
reason. And then it's really neat online because you can search a term like predictions and you can go through and then you can see all the predictions he's made or whatever you're interested in. But it is nice having a book too, because you can go outside and just go Walt Brown surfing from one footnote to the next footnote. It is an incredibly fun journey to be part of. And I do thank you for being one of the leaders in this endeavor, because I think you're early to the party. It's going to be interesting to see who's next. So again, thank you so much for your
Sure.
time.
Sure.
What a blessing that is. And and you're part of the Triangle Association for the Creation, Science of Creation or something.
Science of creation, right? We call it task. So there is a local creation science group where we get together. We actually publish a newsletter. So there are original papers that are written regularly, and we publish that newsletter. And we have monthly meetings where we get together and discuss some of these topics. We present people's work and people's papers. We also review some of what's going on in the world around us, the literature and videos and other material that people have done. So it's been a great way to fellowship with other people that have similar interests and try to make an impact on the community around us. So it's been a great ministry as well.
And a good resource for technical expertise. I mean, there's a lot of scientists on that club. And yeah, that's what I think that needs to happen. That's another domino. There should be regional creation clubs that have speakers that come in or Zoomed every month or two. And then I think there should be a creation club in every community where you can get together and show movies and bring people to the regional community speakers and just get this snowball going because it is a lot of fun. But again, thank you so much for what you're
Certainly.
doing, and
Sure.
may God bless your efforts.
Thanks a lot, Brian. I appreciate it. Have a great afternoon. Bless you
Yeah,
too.
you too.